Hello everyone, we are Introspective and welcome to the fourth video of our top-down shooter tutorial series. Today we'll be tackling the enemies and the enemy spawner, specifically how the spawner works and the scripts behind it. This is how the spawners will work after this video. A little example for the people at home. See, it spawns the zombies. You can shoot them and they die, as well as a bunch of different zombies with varying speeds, such as that one. Now, how do you make this spawner? These spawners, you might ask. Well, I'll show you. So firstly, you need to create an empty object and just name it spawner, I guess. Like so, like these ones. And you will need a script that spawns in the zombies or the enemies. But before we get into the spawners, we should first talk about the different scripts that the enemies have. So they both have enemy follow, which just aims at the player, finds where the player is at, and moves towards the position of the player, as well as enemy health, which identifies how many bullets you need to shoot or to hit the zombie before they die. All in all, you'll need 3 scripts, 2 for the enemies and 1 for the spawner. Now, firstly, we'll be tackling the enemy follow script, as it's one of the more important ones. Now, for the enemy follow script, what you need to add the namespace unityengine.ai, as we will be using the navmesh agent for the enemies. So, of course, we need our variables, which is the navmesh agent of our enemy, the transform of our player, and the animator, which will be tackled again in a later video. Now for our start method, we need to find the tag of the player. Before doing anything, you go here, press the tag, and make sure it's set to player so that the enemy can find the player's transform or location. Now, you put player into player object.getComponent transform so that it finds the player's transform, and the animator, of course, to find the animator of the zombie. Now, for the void update method, we will set the destination of the enemy to the player's position, like so. This part of the code is for the animation video, which will be coming later. But that's basically it. This is the main code right here. Follows the player. That's basically it. Really simple. Now for the next one, the enemy health script. You need a little bit more of code, basically. Again, here are the variables. You need a float for health, score manager for score, which will be tackled later, and the player health, which will also be tackled later. Again, for the start method, you'll be looking for the game object that's tagged player. You'll be looking for the score again for later videos, and the player health for later videos. But the one that we need to look at for this one is this one, take damage and die. So create a method called take damage with a float in it, which just decrements the health of the enemy, which is for this example 1, by the amount of damage that the bullet will do. Now, if the health of this enemy drops to 0 or even below 0, it will call the die method. For the die method, it adds the score, which will be discussed later, and it just basically destroys the game object so the zombies die. Now here's the damage part of the code. When a collider hits the zombie and the collider's tag is bullet, like so, collision.gameObject.tag equals bullet, it will call the take damage function, which will then call the die function when it reaches 0. Now, this part of the code will be discussed in the player death video, so take note of these codes, and now we'll be showing how to put it on your enemy. So now the simplest way to do this is you get an asset, for example the zombie prefab, like this one. You drag in both scripts, the enemy follow script and the enemy health script, to the zombie. We will need to import the NavMesh agent from the package manager here. Just search up in NavMesh agent or NavMesh, and then a thing will pop up here, navigation. Once you have this, you just need to put a NavMesh agent on your enemies, as well as a NavMesh surface on the terrain that you have, so that the AI or the enemies can pathfind their way to the player. Just simply put a NavMesh surface and just click bake. So once you put these two scripts, what you need to do is just to put the NavMesh agent of the enemy on the enemy and nothing on the player. Why? Because once the spawners spawn the zombie without the transform, so it doesn't really work when you drag the player's transform here. That's why a while ago we instantiated to find the player tag and put it as the transform of the enemy, so that when it spawns, it'll just simply find player with the game object with the player tag to follow. Now for the enemy health, you can just tweak it. The health can be 2 or it can be 1. These ones will be discussed in a later video, but that's basically it. And of course, don't forget the capsule collider so that we can shoot the enemy. You can do that with a bunch of enemies. As you can see right here, we made 3 enemies. We have slow zombies, which are tanky, 3 health, normal zombies, which have 2 health and are not so fast, and the fast zombies, which are really quick but only have 1 HP. Now that we have our enemy prefabs ready to go, how does the spawner work? So now, the spawner works using a script. It's a very simple script. You just need the enemy spawner script right here. So what this does is that you declare a variable, once again, never-ending variable. You declare a variable for the enemy prefab and the enemy interval. The enemy interval dictates how long or how many seconds it takes before the spawner spawns another zombie. That spawns in after 2 seconds right here, but you may tweak that to your liking. So for the start method, we will be starting a coroutine of the IEnumerator spawn enemy method right here. So just put on both variables as the parameters, which will take the interval as enemy interval right here, and the enemy, game object enemy as the enemy prefab we will put later. For the code here, you'll return you wait for seconds interval, which just basically waits for 2 seconds before spawning the game object that is the enemy. But for here, game object new enemy equals instantiate the enemy prefab, this one, in which position? In this position right here. It says here range because it spawns in at -5 and 5 on the map, on the scene itself, and a range of 6 up or 6 down on the map itself, and 0, so like in the middle. And the quaternion is identity, which is basically just how you made the prefab so it doesn't rotate weirdly. This long line of code makes it so that the enemies can spawn randomly between -5 and 5 and -6 and 6 on the map. After that, we'll start a coroutine again, which spawn the enemy interval of enemy, which is basically just a recursion. It just calls itself, but it never ends. That's basically the enemy spawner class for this game. Very simple, very straightforward once you get the hang of it. Now remember the game object that we created a while ago, spawners? The spawner, I mean. Yeah, so basically just drag your enemy spawner script onto the game object. You may place this game object anywhere you want. So for this one, we just put it in the center and spawn it even over here or over there. It's up to you where, but let's put it in the center. You have to drag your enemy prefab onto the spawner. So we go here, you just drag the normal zombie onto there so that it spawns the normal zombie, and the enemy interval will be how many seconds before it spawns the zombie again. In this case, 3. Once you've done all that, you should able to play the game normally, just like this. So the game is almost complete. For the next video, we'll be tackling the UI, which is this one, the score and the life, and as well as the main menu of the game. Thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed and learned something, and I'll see you next video.